This is a conversation with Bénédicte Blondeau. We discussed through her projects the evolution of her photographic vision, from self-portraiture and intimate spaces to the landscapes, abstract and otherwise, from jellyfish to nocturnal cityscapes, and from the macro to the geological scale, a vision that has grown beyond the self. We talked about her books and the process of editing and publishing with the XYZ team. And we ended our conversation by reflecting on the role of photography in public spaces and on the city as a potential platform for photography installations, a fleeting yet powerful display of the ephemeral. Please join us. Welcome, Benedict, and thank you for accepting this invitation. It's an honor.
My pleasure.
Could you please briefly tell us about yourself and your journey in photography and describe your overall vision in photography?
Yes, I will try to do that. I first discovered photography during my studies. Actually, the first master that I did was in applied communication in Brussels. A long time ago. I finished this in 2010. And there I discovered photography, but not really as an artistic means of expression, but I discovered the medium, I would say. And I felt that the use I was making of it back then was just a little introduction, and that I could go much deeper using this medium. So I decided to follow evening courses after I graduated. And I did this in Ghent, in Belgium, in the academy. And then in 2016, when I moved to Portugal, I decided to continue this training that I had started in Belgium. And then I followed the advanced course of photography in Arco in Lisbon. Which was really, really nice and allowed me to go much deeper using photography as an artistic form of expression. And since then, I mean, I started a little bit before, but since more or less this period, I work on the development of personal projects. I work actually on long-term photography projects because for me it's kind of the only way to go, since my practice is very related to what happens in my life in general, in my vision of the world. Actually, photography is a sort of translation of a perception that I have, and that is in constant evolution, and that keeps on changing through the different life phases. So yeah, it's a little bit of a reflection on this. So the very essence, I would say it's autobiographical, even though if you look at the development throughout the years, my very individual, I would say, is less and less present, but it's more the evolution of a vision, I would say.
I was curious when I saw your bio that you have a master's degree in applied communication. How do you think this helped to shape your vision still in present time or through the years? What contribution?
Well, yeah, during this master, I mean, we were in touch with photography, but not only. It was also about sound and audiovisual. And this is where I learned to use images and sounds to convey not only messages, but also feelings. And after this master, at the end of this master and afterwards, I was working mostly in audiovisual, recording videos and small documentaries related to social and cultural themes. And yeah, like I was doing this for like 5 years in parallel to the photographic studies. And even though, of course, it's complicated to make a movie because it involves more than only still images, for me, it was easier in a way because you can really construct it. You can have a plan and follow it. And then if you miss something, you can go take this little sound, then it will have an influence and it will help the movie as a whole. But photography towards this for me was more like an enigma, like it's more of a challenge to really work with only one still image that can not really convey a message, but a feeling at least, or a vision. So yeah, it was more like this mystery that photography has that was attracting me, and I wanted to go out of the purely factual, more informative part to go more into the creative and artistic one. Yeah, so that's why I chose to go a little bit deeper in this medium.
You know, well, while visiting your website, I saw some of your video work also. And now that you mentioned that contrast between the two mediums, one thing that was very noticeable, it was it's a totally different approach, I think. On photography, you are really contemplative and you contemplate these large time scales and large ideas that surpass time and space eventually. On video, you focus, I think, in very concise moments of societal thematics and persons. People in your photographic projects are almost absent sometimes, or have a very discreet and distant presence. So what do you think is what photography does not allow you to express that video helps you expressing?
Well, yeah, it depends because in my precise case, I used video in a documentary approach, but I don't use photography in a documentary approach. So I cannot really compare these two uses because I mean, at least I don't make the same use of it.
Well, you still do videos and produce videos?
At the moment, not.
Okay.
And also I was doing it in this way because it was commissioned, so it was for work and it had to be this way. But I still have, when I will have more time in my life, I still have the dream of using video in another way, in a way that is closer to what I do in photography. I often record, I mean, often here and there, I also record sounds and video. So yes, so it's all accumulated on a hard drive, but I have not found the time yet to really sit and do
What
something.
do you mean by recording songs?
For example, if I travel, sounds of water, for example, or this kind of
Sounds of water. Okay.
sounds. Yes. So to make soundscapes, because yeah, I would really like, but sorry, it's a bit out of your question, but for the future to create soundscapes also, to give a more installative and immersive feeling to the exhibitions. So yes, this is more a project for the future, but it's something that belongs to the video and that I could use back in my photography work, but in a really completely different way as I used to do it before. So yes, so video is totally not excluded for me. It's just for the moment, I focus on the photographic medium, but I would love to add some movements and sound, at least for the shows. I think it will be great.
Sounds awesome. I would like to now to start our conversation around your photographic projects. Let's start with Lieux Intime, which is a body of work composed by black and white as well as color photographs. The light is very dramatic, and we have kind of a nocturnal atmosphere. This project delves into the intimate confines of a house, portraying a woman in a fragmented, distant manner, evoking a sense of introspection and vulnerability. Can you please guide us through this series and tell us more?
Yes, sure. So this was my first, my first project that was more or less like a finished project. And as I said in the beginning, so my work is mostly autobiographical, and it started actually really with an exercise around self-portraits, this work that I was doing back then for that training I was doing in Belgium. But then by doing this for the first time, I really felt a special connection with the medium, or between who I was and the medium. And instinctively, I started to go deeper and deeper into it, photographing really either parts of my body or of my immediate environments, so really the closest environments where I was finding myself. But it translates a little bit the vision that I had back then. Like the images are very dark. I mean, my images nowadays are also not very bright, but it translates a darker feeling that was surrounding me back then. And during this whole period, a lot of, as you said, vulnerability, uncertainty, and questions about my relation to the world. And photography really helped me to express this in a way that I could not express with words. So it was not really a sort of self-therapy, but there was something in this direction, though. That it could really help me to express something that I felt really deep inside, but I could not express in a different way. But then the years later, this vision changed, because as I said, it's changing all the time, and then it became something else. But yes, that's more or less the story behind.
So do you think we can use photography as, for example, as you said, as a therapy sometimes, or as a tool for researching about the world in general? And how do you see the role of a photographer, or what can photography be for yourself?
I think that people can use it as a way of therapy, and I think actually many people do, even though they don't really portray themselves directly. But the subject that you choose to depict or go deeper into it, I think always have if you work freely and not on commissioned works, always have a connection to yourself. But at least from what I've seen around me, I think most of the people that I know who study or who are dealing with photography do it somehow in a form of similar approach, in the way that since it always translates a vision, there is always a sort of autobiographical dimension, I think, because it always goes into about your connection, how you relate to your environment. And then
Cannot avoid it sometimes.
Sorry?
We cannot avoid it.
Yes, even though if you would like it, you always express subjectivity by recording images, so it's always there somewhere. And for some works, it's more obvious than others, but there is this layer, in my opinion, that is always there. But yeah, for some people, actually, when I was finishing my this master's degree in communication, I followed a woman who was using photography as a form of self-therapy, because she was coming from Togo and she was living in Brussels for a while, but she felt she was not really accept it in the Belgian society. And then through self-portraits, she dared to face herself really and go deeper into these questions of who am I, how do I relate to others, and how do I construct my own identity in function of how other people are looking at me, how they were looking at me before in my old context, and how it is happening today. So at least for her, I know that the discovery of the photographic medium really worked as a self-therapy. So in her case, it was very obvious, but I think, yeah, it happens more often than we think.
So you said that your vision has been developing through the
Mhm.
years. So if you started in this body of work by talking about photography as perhaps this therapeutic, well, in present time, what role do you think photography, what does photography for you?
Yeah, compared to this first project, Lieux Intime, there has been I don't know if I can call it evolution, but not in a way of going from something worse to something better, but in the way of having a change of perspective. But I think the click for me was really around the project that you discovered in the book qu'il, reste. What had a big impact for me was the period when I moved from Belgium to Portugal, because I was saying that in Belgium I was more in this dark zone in a way, and really also having these questions in my head, like some difficulties maybe to find a place in the world around me, or I was feeling a sort of disconnection with my surroundings and my environment. But this changed completely when I moved to Portugal, because it's the moment when I had my first real encounter with the natural world, which was before completely unknown to me, because I always lived in cities and in built environments, also in a country where there is not so much light. Literally speaking, for me, moving to Portugal brought the light and the contact with nature. And this changed my perspective actually completely, because before I was more self-centered in a way and having all these questions and difficulties. But then it was really an opening that happened inside of me, moving to Portugal and being connected more to the ocean and to the nature. And my interest shifted from seeing the world from my own being to seeing everything that was surrounding, and I could not understand why I did not pay attention to everything that is alive around me and that I could not really see before. And this was a very big shift. And then now, in the continuation of this, the latest project that I've been working on, Ondes.
Maybe we can talk about each project, and you comment, and you are already introducing some information about those projects. Let's talk about Anesthesia, if you
Okay.
don't mind. Well,
Yeah.
I do a little description and I comment, and then you tell me what you think. Anesthesia is a black and white series, mostly in muted dark grays. The spaces depicted are mostly empty and silent. Corridors, halls, waiting rooms, and passages. Here and there, some character emerge without being seen completely, giving us the sense of being an observer in an intimate space. We can see half a naked woman with the remote control on her hand, some trees, a vase, and a pelican. There are photographs of fabric with flower patterns embroidered that extend to the ceilings. This last visual of the flowers reminds me of a personal project which I have been calling Framed Nature. This project consists on recognizing the memory of nature printed in in human fabricated surfaces as kind of a nostalgia from a lost paradise, as well as the borders of human perception as a contextual framing device of the world. One of the most remarkable aspects of your work, Anesthesia, is the texture and the lack of transparency, which gives us a sense of real and unreal at the same time, sometimes. Can you please tell us about this project, starting by the meaning of anesthesia in this context, please?
Mhm. Yeah, in this project, actually, anesthesia is like there is a sort of suspension. It's an in-between, actually, between the body and the textures and the environments. There is also maybe a form of feeling of intimacy and sensuality almost. You can almost feel it with your fingers if you will touch like this. There is a lot of play with the curtains and the velvet and these sort of textures and very subtle folds and waves and movements that you can find in the human body, but also in these man-made textures that connects very on a subtle way with some textures that you can also find in the natural world. And there is always a play between what we show, what we see, what we show, and what is not in the frame, but that we can imagine that is happening outside of the frame. So for me, it's a very tactile world, I would say.
So that's my question. Why, when you think about anesthesia, it suggests like you are prevented from feeling, you are prevented from touching the world, and so as you describe it as being tactile, it seems to contrast with the idea suggested by the title.
Actually, the idea of the title came from the fact of being sort of between what is real and what is unreal, and this disconnection between the here and now and the feeling as it is perceived by our brain, I would say. And it was this contrast of the fact of using photography, which is by definition a medium that records reality, to create another parallel reality. And yeah, therefore this anesthesia, as if it was, this prior reality was like suspended and floating on top of the other reality while coexisting. So it's not also completely disconnected in this way.
Oh, I understand. I acquired your beautiful book, as I told you before we started the recording, qu'il, reste, published by XYZ. I think it's a truly masterpiece of photography. Also, the editing is amazing and the design is just beautiful. So much that it has inspired me to write a small essay where I explore some of your ideas. Would you mind if I read it and you tell me what you think?
No, of course. I'm really curious.
Well, let's see how this goes. Qu'il, reste, a profound body of work by Bénédicte, juxtaposes the lasting beauty of natural formations with the transient nature of human constructions. By alternating perspectives on time and space, this series reflects on the ephemeral character of human life compared to the enduring presence of geological and organic structures. While Benedict's exploration raises important points about the fragility of human endeavors, it also invites some intriguing counterpoints. Benedict opens the book with the photograph of a jellyfish, symbolizing nature's long-term resilience. This sets the stage for a comparison between natural and human-made structures, suggesting that geological formations outlast human creations. However, ancient architectural achievements such as the pyramids or Roman aqueducts demonstrate significant permanence and resilience, challenging the idea that human structures are inherently more transient. Moreover, if we compare constructions made by animals, such as beaver dams and bird nests, to human constructions, this comparison reveals another layer of complexity. While these animal-built structures are typically transient, human-made structures often outlast them. Organic forms, such as animal tissue and bones, only achieve geological permanence when they become fossils, literally prints in stone, emphasizing the interplay between the ephemeral and the enduring. Well, I have a second part of this essay. If you want to say something now, we can.
Yeah, I mean, at least for now, it's I think it's really fits with the intentions of the project. It's interesting because what you say about the animal constructions, it's not something that I really considered like this in such a concrete way. But yes, I think it all depends on the scale also that we consider, because yeah, of course there are human structures also that last for a very long time. If you go to look in the Roman history, but yeah. For me, actually, this project, it invites to take more and more and more and more distance, and periods that we consider as being very long, multiple centuries or more. If you look on an even bigger scale, then it becomes 1 second. So it's all a matter of how you look. And
For sure. I was
yeah.
intrigued by, well, I tried to investigate a little which levels of comparison you were using in this work. Well, the work itself, it makes sense, undoubtedly, but as an exercise, when I was thinking about our project, I wrote this essay. Let me read the second part.
Yeah.
Benedict's portrayal of geological processes are as majestic as enduring contrasts with the tumultuous nature of human activity. However, geological processes are also dynamic and constantly changing, mirroring the impermanence found in human life. This perspective suggests that both natural and human-made structures are part of a broader cycle of creation and decay. The visual metaphor of comparing natural phenomena with human cityscapes, such as the jellyfish and urban lights, bridges the gap between the organic and the artificial. While compelling, maintaining a cohesive narrative across diverse categories might require further exploration. In conclusion, qu'il, reste invites viewers to reconsider their perceptions of time, space, and existence. It highlights the transient nature of human constructions against the backdrop of enduring natural forms, while also opening up a dialogue about the relative permanence and significance of human achievements. So tell me what you think.
Thank you very much for this beautiful essay. I think it's really to the point. And yes, so the project is comparing these two perspectives, the one related to the organic and the one related to the man-made structures. But they are not they are not in rupture, they are not in contradiction, they coexist actually, and influence themselves, or at least the natural world influences the man-made world, but we are also part of it, of course, as humans. So it's not just an opposition. So yes, it's really about that, about this coexistence, but as an invitation of looking at things from a broader perspective. It invites to relativize all the things that we take for granted in a way, and see the bigger picture, which ultimately confront us to the ephemeral character of our passage on this planet. So yes, for me it's also a shift of perspective of like in the development of the vision I was talking about earlier, in how I was focusing on the small scale before, and now more and more I'm taking distance from it, seeing the bigger picture, and yes, relativizing many things, but also seeing myself as part of this big whole, gives a lot of freedom also in a way. So yeah, and this is reflected by this project. And yeah, and display on the scales, if you also consider the picture of the cover, for example, if you think of these kind of monumental forms, how they were created, like drop by drop of water over like thousands of years. If you consider things on this scale,
Well,
it
my
really
point is that even that magnificent sculpture, and magnificent photograph, that also is what it rests from a much bigger process, of erosion. So many things led to that form, that we have only what it rests from it. So if you really go bigger in your scale, well, the comparison is a bit more relative in the transient, what is transient and what is not.
Yeah. And what we see also is ce qu'il reste is what remains of it as we look at it now.
Yes.
But it's in constant movement and in constant evolution, even this.
One other concept that you talked about before, and that you are now explaining in a way, it's that concept of a vision that goes beyond yourself. Can you explain a bit more? So usually, I think we take our whole lives to discover what our own vision is. So if you are at a point that you can develop a vision that goes even beyond that frame that is the self, that sounds interesting. So can you please explain a bit more?
Yes. Yeah, for me, actually, this whole process would be as if starting from my house many years ago, I would go on a balloon that would go higher and higher in the sky, and I would have like a movement of de-zoom to discover more and more what is around it, and seeing actually that I'm not only an isolated form and creature, but I'm just one very, very small part of everything that surrounds it. And this shift actually, yes, as I explained, it has really started by traveling, going abroad, discovering different people, cultures, but also the connection with nature that I explained earlier. But this movement actually continues, and it has been now even more exacerbated since I became a mother 2.5 years ago. And the fact of carrying another being inside of my being completely exploded these boundaries that I was seeing before as like something very closed. And now I really don't feel as a closed entity anymore, because I also literally multiplied.
Yeah.
So these connections now are completely different, because I clearly see that part of me is in another life. Of course, this is a very easy to understand example with the birth of a child, but this is actually present all the time, just by the air that we are breathing, or by all the interactions that we are having with other beings or animals or trees and plants. There is always this exchange of air, of energy, of, I don't know how I have to call
Of
it,
matter, even of matter.
of matter. Yeah. So it's just like everything is intertwined, and it's really like a mix of matter, energy, and this I get really more and more conscious of it, or at least this is how my vision is evolving. So yes, this is the movement, this change, this that I was explaining, and that is happening, and that reflects even more in the latest projects. But I guess we talk about it after. Yes.
Well, this leads us to the next project, Ondes, that delves into the concept of energy waves and their impact on existence, inspired by the simultaneous experience of birth and death in your life. How do you translate these profound personal experiences into visual elements within this project? You mentioned incorporating visual recordings from ultrasound waves as well as images from glaciers, caves, and volcanic territories. How do these diverse elements come together to express the continuity between life and death, and what is the role they play in the interpretation of these themes?
Mhm. Yes, so the project Ondes, as you mentioned, the starting point was this double experience of the death of my father, that was very shortly followed by my first pregnancy. And this double experience led me to really consider the borders and the entities of our being in a complete different way, in the way that, as I explained before, my vision earlier, some years ago, was more like I was seeing myself as a separate entity from the world or the environment. And therefore, because I thought that I was a separate entity, I would feel a sort of disconnection, or that would make me feel isolated and maybe not so happy in general, because of this lack of interconnections. But this double experience, yeah, it's something that followed the process that I had already started before, but really changed the way for me how I considered these beings, human and not human, as separate entities, are just parts of a whole. Because in the experience of death, yeah, you have literally the experience of the being in an envelope, but then part of the being leaves this envelope and merge with what is around. And this is something that I could really experience when losing my father, but also with the birth of my child and the moment when I was carrying her, the split of the boundaries, because there is all these interconnections between a being giving life to another being, and through this network of interconnections, it gives everything that it needs, and it grows and grows, and then part of it goes out and lives its life from the inside to the outside while still being related. And so I started to focus on all these waves of energy that go in and out, but maybe it's not only about in and out, it's this omnipresence of energy inside and outside and the splitting of the boundaries of the beings. I don't know if I make myself clear or not, but then looking at this phenomena from even a broader perspective, I also started to see it in the landscape, in the rocks, in everything that is surrounding, because these transfers of energy are everywhere, since we are part of a bigger system, and we are, how to say, we are functioning also, so as a whole, but also as a part of something bigger, with all this energy circulating, this flow that is there all the time. And so this is what I decided to go in search for in the project Ondes, and I explored like landscapes like volcanic territories, ancient glaciers, or I focused on the representations of this energy through the elements, air, water, or what had been fire before. And everywhere where I could find traces of it, in a way, this was the how to say, le fil rouge in French, the concept that was behind and that was guiding me through the gathering of all these images for the project Ondes. Yes.
So that's very interesting. Well, I know that artists in general are much more open in general, because we have a much more fluid personality sometimes, and the vision about ourselves is more open to change in general. I was thinking now that that vision of yours is developing beyond the frame, let's say. So you have the frame, the literal frame of the photograph, and the metaphorical frame of our perception, because everything we perceive and everything we express about the world is contextualized necessarily, because we have no other tools. We cannot exist in a total fluid way. So my question is, how are you able to reconcile these two? Well, on the one hand, you have this this enlarging picture, this that is expanding more and more, and on the other hand, you have to deal with the single photograph that you take to express that same concept of openness. So how are you able to reconcile these two parallel concepts?
Well, it's a real challenge, I would say.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's really not easy. And sometimes I think, actually, why do I make my life so complicated working with the medium of photography?
Yes.
Because maybe if I would work with another medium, like maybe sound, for example, would be easier. I mean, I don't know. I should delve deeper into it before formulating any definite opinion about this. But indeed, yeah, it's a paradox in a way. But I think that this paradox is maybe what interests me the most about photography, of using this medium that is, by definition, that is recording or reproducing, framing reality to express things that are completely not fitting with this way of processing. But yeah, there are ways, I think. For me, yeah, a way is to look for this for these shapes and these movements and traces, as I was saying, but also photography can be used in different unconventional ways. Like, for example, for this project Ondes, I also used an image of that was recorded with ultrasound wave, but resulting in a picture. Or I also photographed a lot of microscopic views of small drops of water found in the sea that ultimately represent plankton. Because in this process of going to the origin of life, where we come from as an individual, but also human as a species, it led me to go wanting to search in this very primal and first form of life, of animal life. But then, yes, we think that we are like framing what one part of reality, but if we zoom in, then it's completely beyond what the image that
Well, but that when you zoom in, you produce another photograph that has its own story and context. And to complicate even more, within the frame, we inevitably relate the elements that are within the frame. So we create another context. In which way do you think we are able to surpass that apparent limitation of the medium? So maybe it's through the series, having different photographs of very different ideas and contexts. How do you think we are able to surpass that? What's in between the pictures?
Wait, because there are two parts in your questions, I think. So first of all, when we frame, so there are so many different ways of framing. Like I would frame something that is here, but if I go deeper into it, then there are many other details that I would not see by my first approach. So it really depends how I look and what I am looking for. So creating actually 1,000 ways of framing at different scales, which actually allow a lot of liberty compared to the first idea that we have. Okay, I will frame the reality that is here like this. But if I go further or deeper, then many new things appear that I did not consider at first.
What do you mean by going deeper? You are in practical terms. You mean, for example, if you have a printed photograph in a wall, in some gallery or in a book, you are well, in a way, you are limited by the scale that you have chosen to print it. So you can go so far, but you cannot go inside the what is there. So if you, for example, if you do macro photography as you have done for this project, or that produces a totally different photograph. So we know conceptually that one reality is inside the other, but in terms of photographs, they are different objects. So what do you mean by going into the photograph or further?
No,
You mean just looking at the picture, or in some mental space?
Here I meant, first of all, like literally speaking, using a microscope, and then if in my frame I have a little dust that is here, but actually in this dust, if I zoom in, there is also so much diversity that if I look very, very close at it,
you are talking about using a microscope as a way of seeing a photograph.
Yes, here I was talking about this. So I could even see like the cosmos in something very small, but it's because it is small on my scale as a human. But another way to go beyond that framing about the first part of your question, for me, it's also the suggestive aspect of photography, the power that it has to represent, but also the power that it has to evoke things that are beyond the frame. by some elements, traces, or how things are present in a way or absent. It suggests many other things that exist actually only in the mental space of the observer, and not only inside of the picture. So I think this is a very powerful aspect of the medium of photography, is this power to suggest and evoke a reality that goes way further than only what you see in a concrete way inside of the framing. And then, of course, as you were saying, by the association of different images in a series, it creates connections and bridges that make new meanings and new levels of interpretation appear that you don't have by looking at only at one image. So yes, you have all these different layers of suggestion and interpretation that playing around with photography allows.
So I know that you are about to publish a new book with the XYZ. Can you eventually give us some glimpses of what it is about and how is the process going? Also, if you can, maybe you can use the previous book as an example. How is the process of working with the XYZ well, as an outsider, it looks like a very collaborative enterprise. So can you talk to us about both the process, the previous book, and the book that you are about to launch?
Okay. So my first book, qu'il, reste, was published in collaboration with XYZ. But before I got to know them, I had actually made already one dummy version of the book myself, of the project, as I thought. My shipping is here. Sorry, I'll be back.
We are talking about the process of publishing a book with the XYZ, and maybe talking a bit of the previous book, and if you can, of the book that you are about to launch.
Yes. So for my first book, qu'il, reste, before meeting Thiago and Pedro from XYZ, I had made actually a dummy of the project, as I considered it to be finished before meeting them. And the dummy, yeah, it was all handmade with a hardcover, and I spent a lot of time to work on the selection and on the fabrication of these objects. But when I presented it to the editors of XYZ for the first time, even though they thought the project was of interest, they really did not appreciate the form that I had given to it. And they questioned also the selection a lot, because I think that they were able to perceive the intention that was underlying this project. But in their opinion, it was not well expressed through that selection and through the form that I had given to it. So they invited me to reconsider everything and to also be sort of very clear and honest with myself in a way, because I think before meeting them, I was taking many detours to try to explain something that was already there, but I could not really fully grasp or understand it. And they helped me to really understand what I was doing from the beginning, in a way. So it took a while, and I worked on the content with Thiago for some weeks. And he also invited me to write about the project, but also write about my intentions and why I was making this project. And through all these questions and the reflections about it, I started to understand something that was already there, but more in an intuitive way, and it made clear what the project was really about. And starting from this, we reworked actually the whole selection, and I took new pictures, but I also went back to my archive and discovered that I had many different pictures than the ones that I had selected that would serve the intention of the project better, my narrative much better than the ones that I had chosen. So it was a very long process, and the collaboration was indeed quite intense. And for me, it was also very challenging in a way, because it was a lot of questions and reconsiderations, but ultimately it really helped me to understand the deep intentions that were there, and the narrative of the project in a way that was that made much more sense to me than what it was in the beginning. And then starting from there, working with the designer Joanna Dureich.
What
Also,
in terms of narrative, what do you think were the main changes?
From the moment that I had expressed what the project was about, like this putting in parallel this perspective, these two perspectives on the world, the man-made and the human constructed, and the natural one, and how they were also connecting. Then I reorganized the pictures according to this, and I went back to my archive to also select more pictures of organic forms that were not in my first selection, and that were really reflecting the concept of qu'il, reste more than other images that I had chosen. And other pictures just disappeared, like some pictures even were human, where you could see the presence of human body. They were out, for example, in the new version. And the order also changed completely, the order of the pictures. So it was this mostly. And we included more pictures of a volcano and of the elements. And
so did you have, for example, more pictures of the decay aspect of human construction, that those that are present in the book, in your original editing?
Not exactly decay, but more pictures showing how humans were trying to organize the natural world. For example, pictures taken in natural history museums. But it's also depended, maybe it would have fit in a way, but it was also depending on how they were taken. And I think they were taken in a way that was somehow too obvious. And we chose pictures that were a bit less
Literal.
less literal, yes, instead of showing that had more this presence and this power of evoking. So this was also different in this way.
Oh, the result is amazing. How was it working with in partnership with the designer, and the final, well, what steps have you made together till the finished product?
Well, it was also challenging, and it was also a whole process for me, because I was also a little bit new to this world of photo books when I arrived at their place for the first time. Now my vision is different. But I would not have imagined to give such a book, such a form, sorry, to the book as the one that was ultimately chosen. But many things I did not consider. For example, the practicality of the formats, the costs, the fact of the presence that gives a hardcover to a book, but also in terms of budgets, there is a world of difference between one choice and the other, and also in the type of paper, the type of binding. So it was a mix of finding a form that fits to the inside of the book while being practical, being not too expensive, and having being original enough to be able to stand out compared to, I mean, if people are in the book markets and they see thousands of books, what will be the thing that will make that their attention will go to your book, and that they will want to take it in their hands. All these things, I mean, if you are inexperienced in the field, as I was much more when I met them the first time, were not really easy to find for me. So of course the proposal of the designer was really great in this sense, and she gave a shape to the book that turned it into a very beautiful object. So this collaboration was like really brought much more to my project than what I could have hoped before starting the collaboration. Yeah.
Yes, she collaborated also in the editing, or just after the editing was settled?
After the editing was settled. Yeah.
Yes. So how attached are you to your own sequencing presently?
To my first sequence, you mean?
No. Well, if you are doing a new book, and was the process similar in a way? And also, for example, if you are preparing an exhibition, if you are attached, if you would like to edit yourself the series, or you give space, well, give that job to another people.
I think I'm way less attached than I was before. Before I had done my little thing and I felt very close to it, and I was more attached. Now it has changed actually. For the second book, Ondes, I had a sort of, not really a sequence, but an order when I presented the pictures, because I had already worked on this project for exhibitions and I had to send it away. So I had to make some documents in which I had to present the pictures in a certain way. But I would have hoped to meet the editors of XYZ before doing this. And so this time I arrived more with a package of images rather than a ready-made sequence. And I explained them what was the idea of the project and the concepts behind it. But I really did not have any sequence that I wanted to follow in my head. Maybe some suggestions here and there, but I was really prepared to start this collaborative approach from the beginning. And I knew already that even if I had constructed something in my head, by talking to them, it would end up to be completely different in the end. So I went more for the second book with the intention to work together and build something together, rather than presenting something that I would stand for. Because for the first experience, I really understood that it's this collaboration that is very important also in the construction of the sequence of the projects. So here I was really prepared for this, and actually it was much more fluid than for the first book, because
is it the same team, same designer also?
Yes, it is. It's also with Joanna. It's the team is really the same. But because we have worked together first time, I think, and also because my vision has evolved, and that I don't know, I understand things differently. It was much quicker and much more fluid to work on the second book now than on the first one. It was less of a challenge, at least for me. So, and for them too, I think. Yeah.
Can you say what project are you featuring in this book? If you can, this is not a problem. You can leave that for after
You mean
it's published.
The project Ondes?
Is it Ondes that you are publishing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That clarifies.
So I think I explained already about
sure.
earlier.
Benedict, I want to thank you again for your presence here and for the work you do. And to finish our conversation today, I would like to invite you to reflect on the presence of photography in public spaces, if you would. The visual space is dominated by advertising and political parties in the massive proliferation of images and on billboards, for example. On the other hand, we are increasingly seeing alternatives such as photography exhibitions produced in outdoors, billboards, murals, and other surfaces. Well, you have a master's degree in applied communication. I'm not sure it's relevant to this opinion, but I would like to ask you, as a photographer, if what place do you think does photography have in public art, and what is the potential for growth in this area of production? How do you see photography contributing to the public discourse and cultural expression in urban environments?
But do you talk about artistic authors photography or
Yes,
photography?
for sure.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is, because nowadays we are bombarded by this flow of images that are omnipresent, I think we have kind of lost our ability to really look at images because it is so much and in such a limited space and time that for me, I think the problem is that we don't take the time anymore to really look if we don't, or if we are not there with a real intention to look. So I think that this sort of photography we are talking about could work better if people are invited by a setting to slow down the rhythm and enter in a certain presence in their minds before looking at images. Otherwise, they could see many things without seeing them because we are just used to look here and there and tack, 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 tack. But if we are talking about images that are not designed to be understood in or not even 1 second, of course, it takes longer to look at them. So I think that the context for this is important. And with my work, it's also what I'm trying to invite people to do, because the work is very contemplative in a way, and it has a meditative aspect almost, that is an invitation to slow down and take the time to pay attention to some details we will not see otherwise, or yeah, so it goes completely, like the way of looking is completely different from the way we are used to look at images. And yeah, for me, I think at least the author's photography would work well if it could, first of all, invite people to yeah, to slow down a little bit and look for real, and not just thinking that we have seen things, but take the time to look and then see what is really there rather than mental projection on something that is designed to be grasped in a very short time.
So have you had some production of your exhibits in outdoors? No.
No.
Would you envision to doing so?
I'm not sure actually.
Not sure.
Yeah, it would really depend
What
because
kind of place would be suitable for your work, do you think?
I think an environment without too much distraction. Because once I received an invitation actually to put an image on a very busy street on some panels outside, but I thought my work is not really fitting for this. It requires more, this process that I have described of being in a state of quietness to look at it. Otherwise, I'm not sure it would work, or it would disappear in this busyness. So at least if it will be outdoor, I would say not in a busy cityscape, more in a place, maybe even if it's outdoor, but when you have to go inside of an outside space.
Some park, for example, some private park,
some park could work, or some courtyard, or it's more like how I would imagine it, to have sort of a protection around.
Yes.
A protection that is also offered by the book format, that you have the images in their little bubble that is protecting them in a way. And this is also how I would imagine having them outdoor, if it has to be outside, yes.
And would you think that you would produce a site-specific thematic, or that you could eventually, well, not have that in consideration, that you could exhibit any of your projects?
You mean site specific in the content of the picture, or in
Well,
the
try to, for example, if you were starting from a new project, for example, and you know that you were producing that project for that setting in outdoors, would you try to establish a more direct dialogue with the surroundings, or would you produce a more independent vision?
I think more independent vision.
Well, for example, in galleries, we are very used to galleries, and galleries are constructed in the most neutral way possible, I think. Then you can exhibit anything you want, and that is accepted. In public space, because it's public, well, there are more certain contingencies, I suppose. Certain thematics would not be suitable. For example, how do you would think about that interplay between public space and the intimacy of your photographs, for example, or the contemplative aspect of your work?
I think I would adapt the format, but not the content.
Okay.
So I think I would adapt the format maybe to fit the space more according to what the space is, go smaller, or most probably go bigger, and play on different materials. But in terms of content, I don't know, because I work in this very intuitive way, and I explain the whole process of what is at the basis of my image making. I'm not sure that I would be really the right artist to produce in terms of content really site specific photographs, but according to which space we are talking about, maybe I would find something fitting
Within your work and projects, for
my
sure.
work, and then the selection will be very important. But I will not, I think, really create something for a space, at least not if it connects directly with the themes that are dear to me. I mean, I say this now, but I've never done it, so I take nothing for granted. Maybe I will try and I will discover something that works. So it's also a possibility, but how I would see it with the kind of things that I'm producing at the moment, it's more like the answer that I would give.
Bénédicte, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have this moment with you and reflect on these topics.
Thank you for listening to this conversation with Bénédicte Blondeau. I strongly encourage you to check out her new book, which has since been released at the Arles Festival, as well as her previous one. They are true masterpieces of photography and editing, and the design is just beautiful and inspiring. And if you are so inclined, also take a look at my self-published book, Visita Guiada. Links in the description.